Wah! Hi there, my name's Salem, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about what I've been doing to learn Japanese. I'm going to talk about what I've done, what I would like to do in the future, what I would like to be able to do. I'm going to section this out into my background. I'm going to break down my routine after that and show you guys what I'm doing, talk a little bit about why I'm doing it, and then talk about things I've bounced off of. This is really just sort of a log for myself to keep track of my progress and see what I've been doing, see what's working. So, background. Let's start with that. I've been doing this for about 7 years. I'm not very good at this. So that's been about 3 years of study spread out over that, however, for Japanese. 2 of those years were in Japanese classes in the US, where I used the Genki textbooks. And then I did live in Japan for 1 year studying over there, and I took classes with the Mina no Nihongo textbooks. The classes were purely in Japanese, and I understood very little. I think living in Japan did very little to improve my Japanese. That is my fault, but it is what it is. My level is probably N4 for comprehension, and it's maybe N5 for output. I can get through drama CDs, which are sort of my main source of content, what I really want to be able to understand, with a lot of effort and a decent amount of word lookups. I can get the gist of what's happening, though details are still absolutely flying over my head. I can usually parse sentences okay in terms of like particles, where grammar pieces start and end, where words start and end. It's mostly just I don't know what the pieces mean. So right now, my routine is sort of geared to set up for January of 2026. November and December of 2025 were mostly about learning a lot of vocabulary, just sort of getting initial contact with it in the Kaishi 1.5K deck. Learning kanji radicals, learning phonetics. I'm sort of figuring out what I want my routine to look like right now, and I'm sort of honing that down. January, I plan to put a lot of that prep into action, learning actual kanji, learning vocab with kanji and everything, getting into more, hopefully, native speaker-oriented content in a more meaningful way. So let's talk about all that. If you want to skip to any section of my routine, here's the whole timeline. I adjust this constantly, so this is what it is right now, but if something's not fun or doesn't feel helpful, I'll usually give it about 3 to 5 days. I tend to burn out very easily, so it's not very long, but I just don't want to spend time getting used to tools that I don't like, or that are just not for me. So a lot of my routine choices are about conserving energy, making my tasks as frictionless as possible, and reducing the amount of choices that I have to make per day, because I am neurodivergent as fuck. I usually do sprints for Anki. That's going to be the first thing we talk about. We got to get Anki out of the way. Anki, Anki, however you say it. GIF, GIF, it's GIF, and it's Anki. So I usually like to do sprints, or what I call sprints, where I take about 200 to 500 vocab words a day from a deck, and I do that over like a weekend. Just to get like a first contact, a first sight of them. So I've done this with Kaishi 1.5K, just to get a bunch of words in my brain over the past couple of months. Nowadays, I usually just do about 15 to 20 vocab words per day, and I have 2 decks that I use. I'm currently a few days away, actually, from finishing the Kaishi 1.5K deck, and then I also have another deck that has content that vocab that I've taken from content that I like and want to study with. My reviews usually total to about 100 per day right now, but if I don't know a card quickly, I also fail it quickly, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not spending a ton of time on it. Right now I am, because I'm really behind, but usually I'm not. So, as far as add-ons go, I have sort of just installed whatever sounds fun to me, whatever is helpful in that moment, whatever makes Anki look a little prettier for me, I don't know. I don't like to think about Anki too much. I just like to use Anki. So, stuff like, I hear people say you should only use like the easy or again button. First of all, there's 4 buttons. I'm going to use all the buttons. Second of all, it's just, I don't want to have to keep track of all that stuff in my brain. I know that seems like one little thing, but when you have like 100 little things to remember about like your routine and your program and everything, it just gets very overwhelming for me very fast. So that's just an extra thing I don't have to think about. The add-ons, like I said, I just do whatever's fun in that moment, and I do not think about them again. I probably have a bunch of add-ons that are doing absolutely nothing in my Anki right now. I do like the process of setting up decks. I like checking the stats, etc. But I like to import a lot all at once. I don't like having to individually gather words and gather sentences and everything. I find that to be incredibly tedious. I've tried the extensions. I've tried the browser extensions that, you know, go around and everything in the Japanese learning community. I just don't really prefer it. I just prefer to import all at once. So I just like doing things in batches. So next up, we're going to talk about the input that I get some of that vocab from. Now, this is really where my focus is. I am very reading and listening focused. I don't care too much about my output right now. Comprehensible input. Of course, we got to talk about it. And incomprehensible input. So I approach both of these a little bit of a different way, because I do like to use incomprehensible input and make it comprehensible, kind of brute force it. So I'll explain sort of my process for that in a moment. But comprehensible input. My favorite resources have been Link, Satori Reader. I really like the YouTube channels Kensan Okaeri, Comprehensible Japanese, Nihongo Learning. I'll usually watch about 20 to 30 minutes of a video daily from these types of channels, and then I will also read at least one short story from Link or Satori Reader. NHK News Web Easy, I think, if I got that order right, would be sort of a similar thing, like one article a day. So now, the incomprehensible input. I usually spend about the same amount of time with my incomprehensible input as I do my comprehensible input. And what I do is I will extract the vocabulary from, a transcript of a CD that I've gotten, or a story that I want to read that I have the text for, and I will import that into Link. That's really one of my main things that I lean on, one of my main resources. So most of the things that I bring in are BLCD transcripts, and so I will read a couple pages a day, and I will kind of go through the words very slowly. I'll bring the words into Anki. And I will do my best to get the words at least so I can kind of try and scaffold the grammar off of it. I'm not very good at noticing, kind of more subtle patterns and stuff in language. Neurodivergent as fuck, which is, a little detrimental towards immersion, but it is what it is. It's my brain. So, now, with the incomprehensible input, what I will also do occasionally is I will read the English translations to make sure my understanding is correct. And I also, again, that's sort of a scaffold I use that will help give me more context when I go back and re-listen the next day, I'll maybe listen first in Japanese and read it all in Japanese, and then I'll read the English translation and see if kind of what I thought was happening was what was happening. And then I'll listen to it again in Japanese and kind of go through it again like over the next few days in Japanese, and just use that English knowledge of what's happening as sort of a base to sort of parse things easier. So that's what I'm doing pretty much for my input, mainly through Link, and then Satori Reader, and a lot of comprehensible like Japanese YouTube channels, not necessarily just that comprehensible Japanese specific channel, but just the category, are kind of my main things for input. So grammar. I have been through Genki 1 in class. I went through Genki 2 briefly with Tokini Andy. I think I did some Genki 2 in my US Japanese classes, but it's been a while, so I can't remember for sure. But I found, actually, I think if I could go back, I would do exactly 1 year of in-class, like, Japanese learning, because I think the base that it gave me was very solid. I know a lot of people don't like classroom learning and stuff and textbook learning and all that, but I personally found it was really helpful just having like explicit English instruction to provide a framework. I think 3 years of Japanese study in college was probably too many for me personally. I think I would have gone back and done 1 year and then gone full input and everything after that from the level that I had gotten to. But so I went through Genki 2 again briefly with the Tokini Andy series, and just did like a lesson a day, again, just for the like bare contact with it, just like with the Kaishi Anki deck words. I do plan to go through the grammar course on Satori Reader. That's going to be sort of next up for me. So it's pretty much it for grammar. I think that's pretty simple to talk about because it's mainly been Genki for me. The Genki textbook, the Genki workbooks, and then like I said, Tokini Andy. That's kind of been my main sources. So next up, shadowing. I usually do about 10 to 15 minutes of shadowing a day. I just really like it for sort of like, it helps me listen to what I'm listening to without listening too hard to it. I don't, that's not a good way to explain it. It helps me listen to it without being so analytical about it, where I just have to process it and get it in my brain and out of my mouth really fast. So I think that's been helpful for me. It's hard to say for sure, because I think a lot of my pronunciation is probably fossilized over the first couple years I was learning Japanese, so I don't know how much it's improved with the shadowing, but one can hope. So now here's the next thing, output. I think output is good. I think output is probably good early on. Just very simple output, just to get the idea, just to sort of use what you're learning. I've really switched my opinion on this fairly recently, actually, where I kind of always thought that I had learned some Japanese in my college classes sort of despite the format. But I think for beginners, honestly, and for my own, like my brain, neurodivergent as fuck, that sort of instruction is just very helpful for me. However, now I don't really like outputting. I think it's very helpful. So it's not because of anything against it. I think it's, like I said, actually pretty helpful. But right now, it's demotivating for me, and I'm mainly interested in understanding my favorite content, and I'm okay with the process being a little slower without performing any output. So I might change that with Italki or something eventually. It's just right now I'm not in a situation where I really feel driven to do a lot of output. For now, I just like to check my understanding with comprehension questions or a translation. Usually the latter, to be honest. So next up, I think that's gonna be it for output. I don't have much to say on it. Kanji. Right now I'm doing no kanji study. I am learning some radicals and I'm learning some of the kanji phonetics, but I'm not studying any actual kanji. So I know probably about 150 to 200 kanji, maybe another 100 loosely. But I plan to start up again in January. Once I sort of have these building blocks, I would like to learn about 3 to 5 per day. I'll probably grab that from a frequency list, from vocab text I'm reading. I've considered using kanji from Zero as well, because I quite like the format of that book. I think I've picked up a few, kanji incidentally from, using the Kaishi deck and everything and just seeing them a lot, but very little. So I think that's kind of my routine. I think that's kind of everything. But I did want to mention some other favorite resources, some that I showed in the beginning. So this is one. Now, I can't say whether something is helpful generally, but I can say whether something feels helpful for me. This is probably one of the most helpful pieces of Japanese media that I have. Japanese learning-oriented media that I have. The Japanese Short Stories for Beginners is such an incredible book. So each chapter, you have a short story. All of the text is bolded that are like keywords or vocab words. You have an English line-by-line translation, or almost line-by-line translation here. Again, with all of the vocab words bolded in English and in Japanese. You have a Japanese and English summary. You have your vocab list separate, and then you have comprehension questions. I think this is such a well-structured book. I love this book. Now, another thing that I like to use is lemmatizers. So this is a complicated one. I have a video previously that talks a little bit about sort of complicated setup, but helps get like vocabulary from Japanese text and everything. If you can figure out sort of the process of it, I think learning what lemmatization is and how to do it and format it and everything for vocab is incredibly helpful for just making a lot of Anki cards at once. If you're somebody like me who struggles with the consistency of making or mining words like sort of one by one in media, lemmatizers are such a good way to grab vocab in bulk. Now, I don't want to say these are things that I've disliked, but they've just are things that haven't meshed well with me. So most apps, to be honest, apps in general, I don't prefer gamification. If I'm having to learn something and study it, I don't mind if it feels like studying it personally. I would rather it feel like studying than sort of like adding in all the little points and the things to keep track of. And even very basic gamification is not preferred. by me. So as far as like specific sort of websites and programs and everything, I don't like to use probably more than 3 or 4. Italki, I've sort of bounced off of as well, which is kind of funny, I think, because I was mentioning earlier I would like to do more Italki again. However, I just feel that early on it was not very helpful for me. The teachers the tutors that I saw were great. They were wonderful. It was just a problem of I felt like I was too early on to be gaining much from, half an hour, 45 minutes of a discussion, whereas something more like 5 minutes of output or writing 5 sentences a day or something was really more the level of output that would have been helpful for me at that point, without spending money that I wasn't necessarily seeing the biggest return on. So language exchange apps, these are something else I've sort of bounced off of just because, I'm not a conversationally oriented person. Neurodivergent as fuck. Now, I guess the final thing really would be to talk about my plans for 2026. Really, generally, I want to decrease my intentional study. I want to listen to a chapter of a drama CD daily in January. I might not be able to keep up like a really high pace, but for January, I would like to be studying for like a good few hours a day, like 3 to 5 hours a day, just every day, and really buckle down with it, and sort of get a head start. Like I said, I'm a fan of sort of like chunking my progress. So I like to do a lot in like one little period of time and then sort of like review that for quite a while and then do another big chunk. And then review that for a while until it all sort of absorbs. It may not be the most efficient way of doing it, but it's the way I've found that works best for me. Yeah. So I think more native content, less learner content, just more time sort of immersing in general, which I know is always the thing, but I want to. So I think generally I just want my behaviors to be a little bit more like picking up manga, like when I just want to, hang out and read something. I just don't do a lot of things where I will pick up material just for fun. A lot of the time when I'm picking something up, it is to study with it, and I'd like to get to a point where I can just pick something up to enjoy it rather. Along with that, I think my final goal is there is one game that I have loved for many years, and I want to play it in Japanese so bad. I want to play it in its native language so badly. Lamento, Beyond the Void. I have loved this game for so many years. Like, I have the actual like hard copy CD of it and everything. This is my goal. This is like a 60-hour visual novel on like the base route. I would like to be able to play this entire game eventually. So what I'm actually using right now for a lot of my vocabulary is actually a set of CDs. The Lamento Convenience Store drama CD. The Lamento Love Love Gakuen drama CD. And then, I don't actually know the name for this one. I think it's like Volume 2. Yeah, just drama CD Volume 2. For Lamento, this is the most higher fantasy type CD. The other two are sort of more slice of life. So it's nice to have these and to be able to sort of get a basic idea for what's going on, get some vocabulary sort of that the characters might use more often, and then finally get into a little bit more intensive content with this. What I'd like to do with my CDs though is focus on one at a time. So I'm not like trying to learn all 3 of these. I'm going through this one until I fully understand it. Then I'm progressing on to my next CD until I fully understand it, and then progressing on to my next CD until I fully understand it. And eventually, I'm hoping that these CDs will scaffold into me being able to play the game Lamento. So that's my ultimate goal. I think that's going to be about it. That's enough rambling and babbling on. I'm probably going to try and do these maybe once a month, once every couple months, and we'll see where that gets us. So thank you all so much for watching. All right, have a good day, have a good time zone. I will see you later. Goodbye. こんにちは。はじめまして。セイレムです。今、カリフォルニアに住んでいます。でも、2、3年前、大学だから、 日本に住んでいました。ああ趣味は読書と、ASMR です。読書はファンタジーの本が好きですよ。うーん、他には、31歳です。はい、ありがとうございます。よろしくお願いします。グビー。